A white Karen, Kylie, sat nervously in the courtroom, her eyes fixed on Barrister Tyson, the black judge known for his fairness. Today was the day her carefully crafted life would either remain intact or fall apart completely. She was here because her husband, Jeremy, suspected that their 10-year-old son, Lucas, wasn't his. Kylie had repeatedly denied the accusations, confidently claiming that Jeremy was Lucas's father. But Jeremy wasn't so easily convinced. He had long harbored suspicions about Kylie's fidelity, certain that she had been seeing another man behind his back, because there's no way he would be black and his son, white. But today's DNA test results would either confirm his fears or prove Kylie innocent once and for all. Judge Tyson sat at the bench, holding the envelope that contained the truth. The entire courtroom was silent, waiting for him to speak, but Kylie felt a growing unease. Something was off, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to spiral out of control. Just as Judge Tyson was about to read the results, the tension snapped. The courtroom erupted into a very big chaos, gasps and whispers filling the room, and what happened next left everyone stunned, including the judge himself, because Judge Tyson, the man known for his impartiality, had a story of his own with Kylie, one that no one expected. But before we dive into the shocking events that follow, tell me, do you think the judge had something to do with the child? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Now back to the story. You see, things had been well between Kylie and Jeremy back when they got married. Everything seemed flawless. On the surface, they were the perfect couple. Jeremy, a wealthy and successful businessman, admired by colleagues and friends alike for his intelligence and hard work. His rise to success had been meteoric, and everyone in their social circle envied their life. Expensive dinners, luxury cars, and lavish vacations became the norm in their high society lifestyle. Kylie, born into privilege, enjoyed every moment of this luxurious life. She reveled in the attention they received as a couple, smiling for the cameras at charity galas and social events, always dressed in the finest clothes money could buy. To the world, Kylie seemed like the ideal, supportive wife. But deep down, there was more to Kylie than her sparkling smile and perfect image. She had always felt a sense of superiority, especially over Jeremy. Despite his success, there was a part of her that resented the fact that a black man had provided her with this lifestyle. Her upbringing had instilled in her a sense of entitlement, and though she enjoyed the life Jeremy had worked so hard to build, she secretly believed she deserved it by birthright. Kylie's hidden arrogance would show in subtle ways. Snide comments about Jeremy's business decisions, dismissing his accomplishments as lucky breaks, and holding her privileged background over his head. To those around them, they seemed happy, but beneath the surface, Kylie never truly saw Jeremy as her equal. The cracks in their relationship were invisible to everyone but Kylie, and though Jeremy worked hard to maintain their lifestyle, Kylie's hidden disdain simmered beneath her polished exterior. Everything changed when Jeremy's business hit a rough patch. What had once been a thriving empire began to crumble, and it wasn't long before the money started running dry. Contracts fell through, deals that seemed certain vanished, and before long, Jeremy found himself losing a significant portion of his wealth. The man who had once been on top was now facing financial ruin. Kylie noticed the shift immediately, and she didn't handle it well. Gone were the lavish vacations and the endless shopping sprees. Their once perfect life, built on luxury and success, began to show cracks. But instead of standing by Jeremy's side, Kylie's resentment bubbled to the surface. She had always believed she was destined for a life of wealth, but now, watching her husband's business collapse, she could hardly hide her disdain. "You should have seen this coming," she spat one evening after Jeremy returned home exhausted from another failed business meeting. Her words were sharp, cutting deep. "All your talk about rebuilding, and yet here we are, barely holding on to the house. What were you thinking?" Jeremy, already weighed down by the pressures of keeping his company afloat, didn't have the energy to argue. He had done everything he could, but nothing seemed to be enough. He had always prided himself on being the provider, but now he was losing everything. Kylie, who had enjoyed the fruits of his labor without lifting a finger, couldn't stand the thought of their luxurious life slipping away. She began to look at Jeremy with increasing contempt. To her, this downturn wasn't just bad luck, it was his failure. The life she had grown accustomed to was disappearing, and in her eyes, Jeremy was to blame. For the first time in their marriage, the cracks were beginning to show. Kylie's resentment was no longer hidden beneath her polished exterior, and Jeremy, struggling to stay afloat, began to feel the weight of her disdain. What had once been a picture-perfect marriage was now unraveling, and neither of them could stop it. As Jeremy's world crumbled, Kylie wasted no time in seeking comfort elsewhere. Enter Logan, a wealthy white businessman who symbolized everything Kylie believed Jeremy could no longer provide: stability, success, and above all, power. Logan was everything Jeremy used to be, and Kylie found herself drawn to him in ways she hadn't felt in years. What started as casual flirtation quickly spiraled into something more. Late-night dinners under the guise of work meetings, secret rendezvous in fancy hotels. Kylie's affair with Logan became the escape she craved. He represented the life she believed she deserved, a life where she didn't have to worry about money or the embarrassment of Jeremy's downfall. With Logan, Kylie felt secure, like she was part of a world that Jeremy could no longer offer her. But the affair wasn't just about money. For Kylie, it was about control. She had always harbored a sense of superiority over Jeremy, but now, with his financial struggles out in the open, that feeling intensified. Logan, with his effortless wealth and charm, fed Kylie's ego in a way Jeremy never could. To her, Jeremy was a man struggling to stay afloat, while Logan was thriving. The perfect marriage Kylie pretended to have at home was nothing more than a front. Behind closed doors, her loyalty was gone. She'd smile and act the doting wife in public, but in private, her heart and body belonged to someone else. Then came the pregnancy. When Kylie found out she was carrying a child, her mind immediately raced to one horrifying truth. The baby wasn't Jeremy's, it was Logan's. For a split second, she considered coming clean, telling Jeremy everything. But that moment quickly passed. Kylie couldn't afford to lose the life she had so carefully built. She couldn't admit to Jeremy or to the world that her perfect marriage was a sham. So, she did what Kylie always did. She lied. With cold calculation, she decided to claim that the baby was Jeremy's, knowing full well that it wasn't. She believed that as long as Jeremy didn't know, she could keep up the charade, continue living her life of privilege, and maintain the illusion of a happy family. Kylie had no idea, though, that the lie she was about to live would grow far beyond her control. As Jeremy worked tirelessly to rebuild the fortune he had lost, something gnawed at him, a subtle feeling he couldn't shake. At first, he chalked it up to stress. After all, losing nearly everything had been a crushing blow, but he was clawing his way back. He was determined to restore the life he and Kylie once had. But there was something else that kept nagging at him. Something far more personal. It was Lucas, their son. As Lucas grew, Jeremy couldn't help but notice that the boy didn't resemble him at all. Sure, not every child looks exactly like their father, but this was different. Lucas had pale skin, light hair, and striking blue eyes, features that didn't match Jeremy or his family's genetics. The thought lurked in the back of Jeremy's mind. Is he really my son? At first, Jeremy dismissed his suspicions, convincing himself that he was overthinking things. But the more time passed, the harder it became to ignore. He couldn't escape the nagging feeling that Lucas wasn't his child. During family outings, people would comment on how Lucas looked nothing like him. What stung the most was when strangers mistook Jeremy for the family's driver instead of the father. Those comments cut deep, each one adding weight to the growing doubt in Jeremy's heart. Finally, one night after dinner, Jeremy couldn't hold back any longer. He casually brought up the idea of a DNA test, trying to keep his tone neutral, as if it was just a thought that had crossed his mind. Kylie, he said cautiously, don't you think it might be a good idea to run a DNA test? You know, just to be sure everything's fine. Kylie's response was immediate and icy. She slammed her glass on the table, her eyes narrowing at him. "What are you even talking about, Jeremy?" she snapped. "Lucas is your son. How could you even question that?" Her hostility took Jeremy by surprise, but it also fueled his suspicion. Why was she reacting so strongly? What was she hiding? "I'm not saying I don't trust you," Jeremy tried to explain, "but you've got to admit, Lucas doesn't look much like me." Kylie's face flushed red with anger. She cut him off, her voice sharp and defensive. "I can't believe you'd say something like that. After everything we've been through, this is what you're worried about? A stupid test? Lucas is our son, and if you can't see that, then maybe there's something wrong with you." Her words stung, but Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that she was overcompensating. Each time he tried to revisit the topic, Kylie's defenses went up higher. She became more distant, more hostile, as if the mere suggestion of a DNA test was an unforgivable insult. The tension between them grew with each passing day, and though Kylie managed to keep the lie going, Jeremy's suspicions only intensified. He began watching her more closely, noting the subtle shifts in her behavior, the way she changed the subject whenever Lucas's features were mentioned, the way she avoided eye contact when he brought up their son's future. Something wasn't right, and Jeremy was determined to get to the bottom of it. He just didn't know how far Kylie was willing to go to keep the truth buried. As Jeremy grew more suspicious, Kylie ramped up her manipulation. She knew exactly how to play on his emotions, using his deep love for their son, Lucas, as her shield. Every time Jeremy mentioned the DNA test or showed any doubt, Kylie would shift the conversation, framing it in a way that made him feel guilty. She would remind him of all the sacrifices they'd made as a family, subtly guilt-tripping him into silence. "Lucas adores you, Jeremy," she would say softly, her voice dripping with manipulation. "Can't you see how much he looks up to you? Why would you ever question our family like this?" Jeremy, already burdened with the pressure of rebuilding his business, struggled with his emotions. He loved Lucas deeply, and the thought of hurting him, or potentially losing the bond they shared, was unbearable. Kylie exploited this, leaning into her role as the doting wife and mother, hoping to steer Jeremy away from his suspicions. But beneath Kylie's calm facade, she was unraveling. Every lie, every deflection, was like a ticking time bomb. She knew that if Jeremy pushed hard enough, everything she had, her luxurious lifestyle, her reputation, her carefully constructed life, would come crashing down. The thought consumed her. In moments of silence, she would stare at herself in the mirror, wondering how much longer she could keep this up. The paranoia crept in, keeping her awake at night. Kylie became more defensive, more controlling. She would keep Jeremy occupied with distractions, planning elaborate outings, and filling their lives with social engagements so that he wouldn't have time to dwell on his doubts. But the tension between them grew thick, palpable in every exchange. Jeremy noticed how her behavior changed whenever Lucas was around, how she'd keep the boy close, as if using him as a buffer. But no matter how much she tried to twist the narrative, Jeremy's gut told him something was wrong. The nagging feeling that Lucas wasn't his son gnawed at him daily. His once unshakable love for Kylie had turned into distrust, and he knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. Kylie could feel the walls closing in. She was running out of ways to manipulate Jeremy, and her perfect world was about to come undone. After months of doubt and endless arguments, Jeremy made a decision that would change everything. He was taking the matter to court. He couldn't live in uncertainty any longer, and Kylie's hostility had only fueled his suspicions. The love he once had for her was overshadowed by the need to know the truth. Kylie, sensing the shift in Jeremy's demeanor, felt the panic rise within her. She had managed to keep him under control for so long, but now there was no stopping him. When Jeremy announced his decision to pursue legal action, demanding a DNA test to settle the matter once and for all, Kylie's heart nearly stopped. "Are you serious?" Kylie snapped, her voice laced with desperation as she stared at him across the dining room table. "You're taking this to court? You're going to drag our family through this, just to satisfy some ridiculous suspicion?" Jeremy stood firm, his eyes cold with determination. This isn't about dragging anyone through anything. I need to know the truth, Kylie. I've let this go on for too long, but I can't live like this anymore. Kylie tried to fight back, her voice trembling as she attempted to regain control. Lucas is your son, Jeremy. How many times do I have to tell you that? But her words fell flat. Jeremy wasn't backing down this time. He had already met with a lawyer and filed the paperwork. The court would decide, and there would be no more running from the truth. Kylie's panic grew as the reality of the situation hit her. If the court ordered a DNA test, her lies would be exposed. She could see her life unraveling before her eyes. Her marriage, her social standing, her access to Jeremy's wealth. It was all about to slip through her fingers, and she had no way to stop it. Late at night, when she was alone, Kylie began to spiral. She knew she had to think fast, but nothing seemed to work. The fear gnawed at her relentlessly. What would happen once the truth was revealed? Would Jeremy leave her? Would she lose everything? The thought of losing control sent her into a tailspin. As the court date approached, Kylie's facade of confidence crumbled, and for the first time, she realized just how close she was to losing it all. The court case landed on the desk of Judge Barrister Tyson, a black man known for his uncompromising sense of justice and fairness. In legal circles, Judge Tyson had earned a reputation for his integrity. He couldn't be bought, intimidated, or swayed by anything other than the truth. It was exactly the type of case he would handle with meticulous care. Judge Tyson had presided over many high-stakes trials, but something about this case struck a nerve. As he read the background details of Jeremy and Kylie's situation, he knew this wasn't just another paternity dispute. There was something deeper, something darker, hiding beneath the surface. He made it clear from the start that this case would be handled with the utmost transparency. No cutting corners, no bias, just facts. Judge Tyson began preparing for the hearing, making sure all protocols were in place. He instructed both parties that the DNA test would be conducted by a trusted specialist, someone he had worked with on numerous occasions to ensure the results would be unquestionable. He didn't take lightly the weight of his responsibility to bring the truth to light, no matter how painful it might be for those involved. Meanwhile, Kylie was beginning to feel the pressure. She had heard of Judge Tyson's reputation. He wasn't the type of man she could manipulate. The thought made her skin crawl. Her usual tactics of charm, deception, and bending the truth wouldn't work here. She was cornered, and she knew it. The weight of her lies pressed down on her like never before. This wasn't just Jeremy she had to fool anymore. This was a man who lived for truth and justice. As the court date approached, Kylie's fear grew. The judge would see through her. The legal system wasn't something she could control, and the closer they got to the hearing, the more her perfectly curated life felt like it was slipping away. The first day of court arrived, and the tension in the room was palpable. Jeremy and Kylie sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, a gulf of distrust between them. Jeremy, calm but resolute, had waited for this moment for what felt like an eternity. Kylie, on the other hand, wore a mask of indifference, but inside, she was crumbling. Judge Tyson entered the courtroom, his presence commanding respect. He took his seat, eyes moving from Jeremy to Kylie, noting the tension that seemed to hang like a storm cloud over the room. He knew this was no ordinary case. It was personal, and it was about more than just a DNA test. It was about lies, betrayal, and hidden truths. Jeremy stood, his voice steady as he addressed the court. "Your Honor, I've spent years wondering, questioning, whether my son, Lucas, is truly mine. Kylie has dismissed my concerns time and again, but I can't live with these doubts anymore. I'm asking for a DNA test to confirm the paternity." Across the room, Kylie clenched her jaw, her mind racing. She wanted to lash out, to throw accusations, but she knew she had to stay calm. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice strained as she tried to maintain control. "Lucas is our son, Jeremy. I don't know why you're doing this, but it's insulting." Judge Tyson watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. He listened to both sides carefully, weighing their words. After a moment of silence, he spoke, his tone measured but firm. "The court will order a DNA test to be conducted by a specialist with an impeccable record. The results will be submitted directly to this court, and the truth, whatever it may be, will come out. Kylie's heart sank. There was no escaping this. The judge had made his decision, and the truth she had buried for so long was now out of her hands. The paternity test was coming, and once the results were in, her carefully woven web of lies would begin to unravel. Jeremy, feeling a sense of relief, knew that he was one step closer to finding out the truth. But for Kylie, the pressure was suffocating. She wasn't just fighting for her marriage anymore. She was fighting to keep her entire life from falling apart. As the days crept closer to the release of the DNA test results, Kylie's panic became all-consuming. The more she thought about it, the clearer it became. Once the results were out, her entire life would unravel. Jeremy would know the truth, and there would be no way to explain it. Her deception would be exposed for all to see. Kylie's mind raced as she tried to figure out a way to control the situation. She needed to act quickly, but the legal process was moving too fast. Every day, the deadline loomed closer, and with it, the certainty that her lies would soon come crashing down. Despite her growing paranoia, Jeremy remained calm. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope. The DNA test would finally bring the truth to light, and he could move forward knowing where he stood. Kylie could see his quiet confidence, and it only deepened her desperation. She couldn't let him win. In her desperation, Kylie devised a plan, one that went beyond simply manipulating Jeremy. She needed to stop the truth before it reached the courtroom, and in her mind, there was only one person who could make that happen: Judge Tyson. She knew the judge had a reputation for fairness and integrity, but Kylie believed that everyone had a price. If she could get to him privately, she could convince him to bury the DNA test results. Maybe a bribe would be enough, or perhaps her charm would work. Either way, she had to try. Kylie's true nature, manipulative, cunning, was fully on display now. She was willing to do whatever it took to protect her secrets. With the plan set in her mind, she began setting it into motion, determined to stop the judge from revealing the results. Late one evening, after the courthouse had emptied and the halls were quiet, Kylie arrived at Judge Tyson's office. Her hands were clammy, her pulse racing, but she hid her nerves behind a cold, calculated smile. She carried a large sum of money with her, enough to tempt anyone, or so she thought. Knocking softly, she entered the judge's office without waiting for an invitation. Judge Tyson looked up from his desk, his brow furrowed in surprise at her presence. "I need to speak with you privately," Kylie said, her voice low as she set the briefcase of cash down in front of him. "I'm sure we can come to an understanding." Judge Tyson's eyes flickered to the money, but his expression remained neutral. He listened silently as Kylie offered the bribe, hoping that he would accept the money and alter the outcome of the case. But the judge didn't say a word, his eyes locking on hers, unwavering. When the judge refused to take the money, Kylie's frustration bubbled to the surface. She had expected him to bend easily, but now she felt cornered. Desperately, she doubled down, throwing even more stacks of cash on his desk. "There's more where that came from," she said, her voice more aggressive now. "Name your price. Just make the results disappear, and this can all go away." But Judge Tyson remained calm and composed, his integrity unshaken. "No amount of money will change the truth, Mrs. Kylie," he said firmly, pushing the cash aside. "Justice will be served, whether you like it or not." Kylie's heart pounded in her chest as she realized her plan was crumbling before her eyes. Her bribe had failed, and she was out of options. The truth would come out, no matter how hard she fought to keep it buried. When the bribe didn't work, Kylie felt her desperation spike. If money couldn't sway Judge Tyson, maybe something more personal could. She had always been able to manipulate people using her charm and allure. Why should the judge be any different? Kylie changed her approach, softening her voice, her eyes locking onto his with a glint of seduction. Slowly, she stepped closer to the desk, brushing her hand lightly against the judge's arm. "You know, we don't have to make this difficult," she whispered, her tone dripping with suggestion. "We could make it all go away, just between us." She leaned in closer, her body language becoming more intimate, trying to blur the line between professional and personal. She let her hand rest on his shoulder, her touch lingering. "I can be very grateful if you help me." Kylie's implication was clear. She wasn't offering money anymore. She was offering herself. In her mind, everyone had a weakness, and she was willing to exploit it to keep her lies hidden. But Judge Tyson remained unmoved, his composure as steady as ever. As Kylie's advances grew bolder, he didn't flinch. Instead, he took a deep breath and pushed back from his desk, creating distance between them. "Kylie, you're making a mistake," he said firmly, his voice calm but authoritative. "This is disgraceful. Your actions are not only inappropriate, but they show a complete disregard for the truth. Justice will be served, and nothing you say or do will change that." Kylie's seductive smile faltered. The judge's unwavering stance left her feeling exposed and powerless. Her usual tactics had failed her. She had thrown everything at the judge: money, charm, even her body, and none of it had worked. For the first time, Kylie realized that she was out of options. Her attempts to manipulate the situation had only made things worse. She could see the cold finality in the judge's eyes. There would be no escape, no bending the truth in her favor. Her heart pounded in her chest as she backed away from his desk, panic rising like a tidal wave. She muttered a few words of protest, but she knew it was over. She had lost. With her last hope dashed, Kylie hurried out of the judge's office, her mind racing with fear. She had tried everything, and now there was nothing left to do but wait for the truth to destroy the life she had so carefully built. The day had finally come. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the moment of truth loomed. Kylie sat stiffly next to Jeremy, her hands clenched in her lap, trying to appear calm. But the slight tremble in her fingers betrayed the growing panic inside her. She had done everything to stop this moment, but nothing had worked. Now, the truth was about to be revealed, and she couldn't stop it. Jeremy, on the other hand, sat composed, his eyes fixed on Judge Tyson, who had just entered the courtroom, holding the envelope that would answer the question that had haunted him for years. The truth about Lucas's paternity was just moments away, and Jeremy could feel the weight of it all lifting, as if finally the uncertainty would be over. Judge Tyson's expression was neutral, unreadable, as he made his way to the bench. He glanced at both Kylie and Jeremy before focusing on the envelope in his hands. The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with tension. Everyone knew that what was inside the envelope would change everything. Kylie could barely breathe. Her heart raced, and every second that passed felt like an eternity. She cast a quick glance at Jeremy, whose calm demeanor only made her anxiety spike further. She knew she couldn't delay the inevitable any longer. As Judge Tyson prepared to read the DNA results, the walls felt like they were closing in on Kylie. The judge's calm authority, the cold envelope in his hand, it was all too much. Her mind raced, and she could practically hear the world crumbling around her. She had worked so hard, lied so much, to keep this secret hidden, and now, with the simple opening of an envelope, it would all be exposed. Her pulse quickened, and suddenly, something inside her snapped. Just as Judge Tyson began to speak, Kylie shot up from her seat, her voice loud and shrill, cutting through the silence. "This is a setup!" she screamed, her face flushed with panic. "The test is rigged. Jeremy is Lucas's father. This whole thing is a lie." The courtroom gasped. Jeremy turned toward her, his eyes wide with shock, while the judge remained composed, watching her with a calm, steady gaze. Kylie's outburst only grew more erratic as she continued to shout, her accusations spilling out uncontrollably. "You've all been against me from the start," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the judge. "This whole system is corrupt. You don't want us to win. You want me to lose everything." Her voice cracked as the room fell into stunned silence. Every eye was on her now, witnessing the unraveling of a woman who had lost all control. Even Jeremy, who had long suspected her lies, couldn't believe the meltdown unfolding before him. Judge Tyson remained quiet, allowing Kylie's breakdown to play out. His expression was one of calm authority, waiting patiently as her accusations hung in the air. Everyone in the room could see the truth. Kylie's desperation had finally consumed her, and the lies she had clung to for so long were about to bury her. The tension in the room was suffocating. Kylie, realizing that her wild accusations had only made things worse, sank back into her seat, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. She had lost control completely, and the truth, no matter how hard she fought, was about to be laid bare for all to see. As Judge Tyson was about to read the DNA results, Kylie felt her world closing in faster than ever. The walls of deception she had built over the years were crumbling, and she had no more defenses left. She couldn't let the truth come out, not like this. Her eyes darted toward the envelope, the thin slip of paper inside holding the key to her downfall. Panic overtook her. In an instant, she bolted from her seat, her body moving before her mind could even register it. She charged toward the judge, her hands outstretched, desperation etched into every line of her face. "No!" she screamed, her voice breaking as she lunged toward Judge Tyson, reaching for the envelope in his hands. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Gasps filled the air, people standing in shock as they watched Kylie's last-ditch effort to stop the truth from being revealed. She grabbed at the envelope wildly, clawing at it as if her life depended on it. "You can't do this!" she shrieked, her fingers grazing the edges of the paper. "You're not going to ruin me." Security officers rushed forward, their boots pounding against the marble floor. But Kylie was already in a frenzy. She fought against them, her desperation driving her beyond reason. Jeremy, stunned, watched in disbelief as his wife, this woman he thought he knew, unraveled in front of him, turning to violence in a final, frantic attempt to hold on to her lies. The courtroom was in an uproar, with people shouting and moving out of the way as security finally got hold of Kylie, pulling her back from the judge's desk. Despite the chaos unfolding in front of him, Judge Tyson remained calm, his expression unflinching as Kylie lashed out. Even as her hands brushed against the envelope, he held it firmly, refusing to let go. His years of experience had taught him how to handle volatile situations, and this was no different. He wasn't about to let Kylie's outburst stop the course of justice. The courtroom may have been in disarray, but Judge Tyson was unwavering. He stood tall, his hand still clutching the envelope that held the truth. He watched as security wrestled Kylie away, her screams echoing through the room. "This isn't fair! You can't do this to me!" she cried, her voice breaking with fear and fury. Kylie thrashed in the arms of the officers, but there was no escaping now. Her carefully constructed world had fallen apart, and no amount of bribery, seduction, or violence could put it back together. The truth would come out, and she knew it. Judge Tyson waited patiently, his composure a stark contrast to the chaos around him. When security finally restrained Kylie, dragging her back to her seat, the courtroom settled into a tense silence. The judge looked at her for a moment, his gaze firm yet calm, before turning back to the task at hand. Justice, he knew, would not be denied. With the courtroom finally back under control, Judge Tyson cleared his throat, the envelope still firmly in his grasp. The silence in the room was deafening as all eyes remained fixed on him. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. Kylie sat frozen in her seat, the wildness in her eyes fading to dread as reality set in. Judge Tyson carefully opened the envelope, pulling out the document that held the answer everyone had been waiting for. His voice was calm and deliberate as he read aloud, "The results of the DNA test confirm that Jeremy is not the biological father of Lucas." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The truth, finally out in the open, was undeniable. Kylie's once perfectly constructed world crumbled in an instant. Her lies, years in the making, were exposed for all to see. The weight of her deception crashed down on her, leaving her utterly humiliated. She could feel the judgmental stares from those around her, their whispers confirming what she feared most. There was no coming back from this. Kylie slumped in her chair, her face flushed with disgrace. The truth had shattered everything she had fought to protect, and now there was nothing left but the bitter sting of defeat. As the words echoed in the courtroom, Jeremy felt a wave of relief wash over him. After years of doubt, the truth had finally been revealed. He wasn't Lucas's father, and his suspicions had been right all along. The constant gnawing uncertainty, the late-night arguments, the emotional toll, it all melted away in that moment. For the first time in a long time, Jeremy felt free. The weight of Kylie's lies lifted from his shoulders, and the burden he had carried for years seemed to disappear. He glanced over at her, sitting there defeated, and felt a mixture of sadness and anger welling up inside him. This was the woman he had once loved, the woman he had trusted, and yet she had deceived him in the cruelest way possible. Their marriage was truly over. Any remaining hope for reconciliation had died the moment the truth was revealed. Jeremy knew there was no fixing what had been broken. No apology or explanation could undo the betrayal. Though relieved, Jeremy's heart still ached. The truth had come at a high price, and now all that remained between him and Kylie was the bitter taste of her lies. The fallout from the trial was swift and merciless. Kylie's lies, once hidden behind her polished smile and careful manipulation, were now laid bare for everyone to see. The affair, the deceit about Lucas's paternity, and her desperate attempts to manipulate Judge Tyson all came crashing down on her. The public humiliation was brutal. Her social circle, once full of admiration and envy, now turned against her. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone so tainted by scandal. Kylie's reputation was in tatters, and no amount of charm could fix what had been broken. Her affair with Logan was exposed in the aftermath of the trial, and the whispers about her deceit spread like wildfire. Kylie had spent years using her beauty, her manipulation, and her calculated charm to climb her way through life, but now all of that had backfired spectacularly. Kylie was left with nothing but her disgrace. The wealth, the status, the carefully curated image, all of it was gone. She sat alone, staring at the wreckage of her life, knowing she had no one to blame but herself. As the dust settled from the chaos of the trial, one figure stood tall, Judge Barrister Tyson. Throughout the entire ordeal, his calm, unwavering sense of justice had guided the case to its inevitable conclusion. Despite the whirlwind of emotions, outbursts, and even Kylie's desperate attempts to manipulate him, the judge had remained a pillar of integrity. Word of Kylie's bribe attempt and her seductive advances had leaked, adding yet another layer to the scandal. But even with these underhanded tactics, Judge Tyson never wavered. He had seen the case for what it truly was, a desperate attempt by a woman to keep her lies hidden at all costs, and he knew his duty was to deliver justice, no matter the personal stakes. The public and legal community alike took notice of Judge Tyson's conduct. In an era where corruption and manipulation were all too common, his refusal to be swayed by wealth or power became the defining moment of the trial. He had handled the case with grace, maintaining his composure through Kylie's violent outbursts and emotional breakdowns. Judge Tyson's reputation only grew after the trial. People praised him not only for his professionalism, but for his deep commitment to truth and justice. He had refused to be bought, refused to bend to pressure, and in doing so, he had restored the faith of many in the justice system. The outcome of the case wasn't just a win for Jeremy, it was a triumph for integrity. Judge Tyson's handling of the trial became a symbol of what the legal system should represent: fairness, honesty, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. His name became synonymous with justice, and his role in the resolution of the case was one of the key reasons the truth had come to light. For Judge Tyson, it was never about accolades or praise. It was about doing what was right. And in the end, justice had prevailed, just as it always should. With the truth finally exposed and Kylie's lies laid bare for the world to see, Jeremy felt a sense of liberation he hadn't known in years. The weight of suspicion and betrayal that had burdened him for so long was gone, replaced by a clear path forward. The toxic marriage that had once consumed him was finally over, and for the first time in a long while, Jeremy could focus on rebuilding his life. The court granted Jeremy a favorable divorce settlement, freeing him from the manipulation that had defined his relationship with Kylie. She no longer had a claim on his life or his future. The legal battle had been grueling, but it ended in Jeremy's favor, giving him the opportunity to reclaim the parts of himself that had been lost during his marriage. Jeremy threw himself into his work, determined to rebuild his business and his reputation. The man who had once been weighed down by Kylie's lies now walked lighter, more confident. He began to rediscover what it meant to live without the constant fear of deceit hanging over him. Friends and family, who had distanced themselves during the chaos, rallied around him once more, offering support and encouragement as he moved forward. With each passing day, Jeremy grew stronger, both mentally and emotionally. His future was no longer clouded by doubt, and his past no longer held power over him. The road ahead was his to navigate, and he was ready to embrace the next chapter of his life, one free from lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Meanwhile, Kylie sat alone, her once glamorous life now reduced to ruins. The woman who had once thrived on manipulation and deceit now had nothing but the hollow echo of her own regrets. Isolated and disgraced, Kylie was forced to confront the choices that had led her here, choices driven by greed, arrogance, and a deep-seated sense of superiority. The affair, the lies about Lucas's paternity, her desperate attempts to control Judge Tyson, they had all come crashing down, leaving her with nothing. As she reflected on the past, Kylie began to understand that it wasn't just the truth that had destroyed her life. It was her own actions, her own refusal to value honesty and loyalty that had caused her downfall. Kylie had believed she was untouchable, that her looks, her charm, and her privilege would protect her from the consequences of her actions. But now, as she sat in the wreckage of her life, she realized too late that she had been wrong. She had destroyed her marriage, her reputation, and her future, all in a blind pursuit of wealth and status. Now, there was no one left to manipulate, no one left to blame. Kylie's life had become a prison of her own making, and the weight of her betrayal bore down on her relentlessly. The doors that once opened so easily for her were now closed, and she was left to face the full consequences of her actions, alone. As the story came to a close, Kylie was left to reflect on the life she could have had she chosen truth over lies. But reflection was all she had left. The choices she made had sealed her fate, and the life she had destroyed could never be rebuilt. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Thank you.